I think we can start by getting rid of the badge of honor that is the 18-hour days and
being busy.
Turn volume and complexity into efficiency and become really efficient at what you do. Provide efficient tools to your team. Demand efficiency so that we're not working 18 hours. Like, nobody should ever be doing that. And we need to be better at that. So efficiency is the name of the game.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's also important to model a good balance, not just promote it. I think we as leaders have to protect people's capacity and listen to them when they say they're at capacity, and treat rest times and post-event breaks as part of the event cycle, not just a reward for enduring. I think those are kind of mentalities that we can shift into more so to preserve all of our teams.
I agree.
Yeah, I also think it's recognizing that everybody is different.
Welcome to EventsDemystified, the top event technology podcast for events, where we demystify what really works in events, as well as in AV, AI, and the well-being of the professionals who make it happen. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. I gotta be honest, I'm nervous. That's gonna be a tough act to follow. All right? Like, we're not gonna be nowhere as entertaining, and now I'm second guessing this. And I'm like, how do we tame this crowd down and still have some fun? So you're gonna have to all help me because it's what we got, all right? After all that amazing game show that Arthur has just had. All right, so welcome to EventsDemystified podcast, the podcast where we strip away the highlight reel and we talk about leadership and what that really looks like, the messy, the bold, and also the deeply human stuff. I'm your host, Anka Platon-Trifan, and it is my great pleasure to record this live here with you, with the live audience. This conversation is built around the theme of human first systems. We're exploring what continues the work as complexity keeps increasing, which fundamentals still hold, how systems are reshaping the nature of everything that we do, and how leaders make decisions that affect teams, partners, and outcomes when the pressure is real. This is a leadership conversation that is grounded in real experience and is shaped by what's actually happening in our own world. And with that, I have three leaders, which I am excited to welcome on stage. They come from different parts of the industry. We're talking about production, we're talking about corporate events, and business leadership. And with that, it is my great pleasure to welcome to the stage Nisa. She is the president of Details, Convention, and Event Management. Welcome to the stage, Nisa. Dustin is managing partner at One West Event Design and Production. Welcome to the stage, Dustin. Oh, we got some fans in the house. This will be fun. And Epiphany is senior director at TK Events, focused on corporate events in the technology space. And with that, I'm going to sit myself down here. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Hello.
So excited to have you here. Now, for our audience to get to know you now, let's do a bit of introduction about who you are, what you do, but also what is it that you're passionate about. So let's start with you, Nisa.
All right, my name is Nisa Solzer. I'm with Details, Convention, and Event Management. We do conferences from about 100 to 1,500 people, academics, association, corporate, a little bit of everything. And I guess my passion is not necessarily in doing flashy events, but doing events that are really working on bringing a community together and letting them develop their passion.
Love it. What about you, Epiphany?
I'm Epiphany. I'm the Senior Director of Client Relations at TK Events, based in Toronto. We primarily focus on conference management and trade shows. I work in the tech field. Our clients are in the tech industry, and I have a background in event marketing in the tech industry as well. So I bring both agency and corporate experience. What I'm really passionate about is leading and building a confident and strategic team to really service our clients in the way that they need to be serviced.
And lastly but not least,
Hello,
Dustin.
Dustin Westling, One West Events. We're a design and production company based out of Calgary. Very happy to be here. I think it's no secret that my passion is using our resources and our time to create opportunities for young people that are entering our industry and giving them a great head start.
We have 3 sets of experiences to contribute to this conversation, which is going to make this conversation worth having. But because we also want to involve you, the audience, we actually are giving you a voice. So what you're going to do is pick up your phone, go to the session in the EventMobi app, and under the session, you're going to go under the poll. And we're going to have a few polls that I would love for you to engage with so that we can hear from you as we continue our conversation. Let me know if you're all there. Give you a second before we engage our first poll. Do I hear a yay? Okay, so the first question that I would like to hear from you as we start our conversation here with my guest today is, as you're thinking about all the things that you do, not just you personally, but also your team and the people around you, how would you describe where most of your time goes right now? This is a multiple choice, so you get to choose one. And with that, I'm going to start us with our first question. What I'm hearing already from a lot of event professionals that I get to talk to is that the pressure isn't always coming from one place. It's not just coming from volume or, as we heard earlier in the game show, budget cuts and decision fatigue. It's also coming from something that's more structural. So I want to start grounding in the experiences that you've all had. And the first question that I have for you, as you think about this, what aspects of the event planning are being stretched the most in your own context, in your own team, or you personally? That's regardless of the role, regardless of the responsibilities.
I think when I look at especially crunch time and when the teams are really stretched, it's not necessarily about workload. We often think that they're overwhelmed by workload, but really it's overwhelmed by decision making. Like you said, decision fatigue. You spend more time in the industry and you spend more time developing your skill sets. You have a framework around approaching decisions, and it allows you to minimize the time that it takes and be less overwhelmed about it. But what we don't do as more senior event leaders is provide frameworks and a shared logic for our junior teams in terms of decision making. And I think we can be more proactive in sharing how we approach our decision making logic so they are empowered to be autonomous and then thus less stretched with decisions.
Now, I just want to piggyback a little bit on this result. Do you feel like that goes hand in hand with this constant switching context that a lot of our audience thinks it's the case?
It's a heavy mix of constantly switching. Yeah, I think so. I think that plays definitely into decision making and decisions around priority too. I think that takes up a lot of brain space for all of us. And the more experience you get, the easier it becomes, and the more I see my junior teams working much harder because they're not as confident in their decisions and in their contexts.
Anyone else wants to add to that? Yes,
Yeah,
Dustin?
I think that the decision fatigue is a real thing, and I think we're being asked to make way more decisions way faster than we ever had to, and the pace in which we're working now is not giving us the gift of time to be able to put some safety nets around the decisions that we're making. We have to make them quickly, and that's where I think, like you were talking about, having some parameters around those decisions and having a real philosophy about how you're going to get to the final decision.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that it's this stretch is not necessarily about just effort, it's this decision load. And that's not a question of competence. I think we're going to come to the question where we're going to figure out how can we alleviate some of that. I think there's so much that's happening on an every day during an event, and that's a lot of the calls that you have to make, a lot of the last minute things that are impacting the overall event. And that shows up in a context of budget cuts, as it was mentioned earlier, in a context of margins that are so much shorter and also deadlines that are upon you. Now, what I would like to take us to next, because I think one of the most common responses to that pressure, a lot of people feel like it's structure, but when we think about what added complexity is creating risk in our events. Is that for the better or is that for the worse? Who wants to take this?
I think there's a tendency to forget about why we're doing the event in the first place. And so always going back to why is this even happening? What are people looking for? Why are they coming? What do they need? And sometimes as event professionals, we forget that even though we go to events all the time, they may only go to one or two all year. So they're fine with rubber chicken. Like, they're happy. They didn't have to make it. They got bacon every morning, like a fantastic event. So I think sometimes we make things flashier or spend more money in places that don't impact the purpose of the event in valuable ways.
I couldn't agree more. We're the worst at adding complexity where complexity does not need to be. And I think maybe we get a little bit bored in our work. And like Nisa says, it's like when you're truly thinking about the audience, take your own opinion of what you want out of it off of the table and don't make things complex that don't need to be complex. We've got more than enough shit going on in our lives and in our work. We don't need to overcomplicate them. Sometimes we use that level of complication and complexity as a badge of honor as to how great we are, when that's not really what the game is about.
What do you think about that?
No, I completely agree with both of you. I don't know how much I have to add other than I often am saying to our teams to slow down and don't overcomplicate it, because not only does it add more risk and decision making on the day of, but it just adds to workload. It can sometimes cloud our clients' judgment when we add more complexity. So it's a win-win to simplify where it can be simplified.
I love that. I think there's something to be said about that need for standards. And also now with the added technology, with AI, it's hard to find a balance, to add technology to help, but at the same time not to overcomplicate the workload. And that is such a fine line to walk, because you want to add technology that can help, yet sometimes it overcomplicates everything that you do. There's also this element of sophistication that comes in because of risk, because of safety. There's this one saying that rules come because something broke in the first place. Now, when we think about absorbing that kind of risk with complexity that can be redistributed, I want to look at how or where things can slow us down, because friction is often where I think responsibility and authority stop lining up. And that's where I would like to welcome our audience to answer our next poll. And I see we already have some answers on the screen. Where do decisions most often slow things down for you? I see budget approvals and changes, vendor coordination and scope alignment, stakeholder sign off, that's one of the highest right now, and then technology and platform decisions. Surprisingly, technology is not necessarily one of the biggest ones. Do you want to weigh in on this, if this surprises you at all, or do you have a different take on what this is right now?
I think all of those can be distilled down to having conviction and strategy behind the decisions you make. If you come to any decision with tying it back to whatever the objective is or whatever the strategy is, you should be able to move and pivot more quickly. So all of those are more tasks that can slow down, but it's more important to think about what the mindset is that is slowing it down.
I think it goes a little bit to what I was talking about yesterday in how planning is not a task competition job. It's a leadership job. And that's, like you said, a mindset shift. Anyone else wants to comment on what we're seeing?
I think just what you said there, so much of what's on the screen with great leadership, this can be so much easier for you. So if these are the things that are slowing you down, these are easy fixes. This just takes leadership, a plan and a process to make that better. I'm shocked that technology is not higher.
Right, me too.
I think there's so much technology slowing us down right now. We're all being forced into this world of using technology because we feel like we have to, and I would put technology way higher on that list.
I think it's interesting that we say stakeholder, is it stakeholder sign off? But going back to, if you pitch something to a client and you explain the conviction behind it or the strategy behind it, it's a lot easier to either adjust, get approvals, or go to something completely different.
Do you have anything to add to that, Nisa?
No, I think the top three there all really go together. When somebody says, hey, we want to change this, now I have to go to the vendor and I have to get the price, and now I have to figure out how that affects the budget, and now I have to get the stakeholder signed off on it. So it all goes together, those three.
Yeah. So I think we talk a lot about what systems and decisions can do, but I'm curious also what they can't do if the opposite would be true. So I think that still requires the leadership human in the loop. And with that, I'm coming to my third question for all of you. Which parts of the event work requires human judgment, that discernment that might come with experience, as we're talking for our younger event professionals coming into the industry? So going back to the question, what parts of the event work requires that human judgment and simply cannot be absorbed by those systems that we talk about? I love systems. I love processes. If you didn't hear that yet, yes, I love workflows. But maybe no matter how sophisticated the tool gets, that's just not helpful. So think about a decision in the context of system that can hold it, or what does automation break down first? All of that weighs into this one question.
I think that systems break when they're static. I'm also a huge fan of systems. I'm constantly trying to implement systems. But when they're static and they're not flexible, that's when human judgment has to come into place. I'm a firm believer in having a system around your judgment calls, especially when you're hitting the pressure times. What is a nice to have, what can we let slide without penalty, and what is a must have.
Yeah.
And I think if you have that decision framework proactively, when a static system fails, you can always kind of resort back to that, and it allows you to make better judgment calls.
So that's nice to have on paper. What happens in real life? Does that exist in real life? Do we feel like we are getting there, or we're still on the way to figure this out?
I think you have to coach that. I think events are very human judgment oriented in the first place, and we try to implement systems that allow us to have the breathing space to make those judgment calls. But if you proactively coach that and step away from it, whether it's in advance or you're in the weeds at an event, you can always resort back to that, and it allows you to just break things out a bit and calm yourself and make the best decision.
Human judgment is going to be the most important part of why we're a bit future-proofed. And as we watch entire industries start to face their mortality with technology and watch their jobs go away, the good thing about this industry is there is a big part of what we do that technology will never be able to take over. And when it comes to conflict resolution, that needs a human to be able to make a human reaction, and that's never going to get replaced by technology. We are going to have jobs for a very, very long time, and our jobs are going to become more and more important. The human side of our jobs is going to become more important. For a lot of people, it's going to be the only time that they get to connect with real humans, as everything else is automated around us. The human part's still really important, and it ain't going anywhere.
I love it. So what stands out for me here from this conversation is how judgment isn't just about reacting to that moment. It's about leaders being able to coach the next generation and also being explicit ahead of time. What are we talking about? What's the plan? Naming all the trade-offs, naming what needs to be protected, naming what the decision architecture really is, and deciding also what's allowed to flex, if there's something to flex. Now, without that, I feel like teams do tend to hold too much on their own shoulders. And that's where we're going back to our first question of decision fatigue, how that happens in real life. As I'm looking at the ways in which the new generation can come into understanding judgment and discernment, how do you gain experience in that? I'm also looking at the pathways that build judgment, and they look like they're changing and they're disappearing. So my question to you is, how do teams build that type of capability when traditional entry-level pathways are shifting so much? Lisa, do you want to take that?
I think you mentioned it earlier with really being explicit with, here's the decision, but here's the process of how I got to the decision. We've got 20 years experience behind us that's saying, okay, here's what I've done. And communities that we've built up where we've been learning from each other. Like Carrie was talking about earlier, where we learn from other people's mistakes. And so we've got all that background. And so we've got a responsibility to share that. So it's not just, hey, I'm coming in and here's what I want to do. Like, I took over my mom's business, and I remember when I started working with her, I just wanted to change everything because I was like, I'm young and I know better. And then 5 years later, I was like, oh, my mom was right.
Now you're like, don't touch my systems. It's the only way. I think Nisa's right. Helping other people understand how you made that decision and having a North Star to go back to when you're making decisions. And it's, who is this really about? What is it that we're trying to accomplish? And always making that front and center. So often in these conferences and on these stages, we talk about this lack of standards or no standards. There are standards out there. You just have to go get them. There's a lot of great resources out there. And I think that is a part of this too. We're not just flying without a net here. There's a lot of great resources out there, and bringing that into your own practice and asking yourself, what are the standards within my organization? And then how can we get that out there is a great next step.
Events Demystified, the podcast for event professionals.
I want to follow up on that really quick because yes, there's a lot of standards out there, but they can also be overwhelming for someone new to even make an informed decision. What's most important for me to know right now? So how do we determine then for someone new? I had this new assistant that I brought on an event one time, and everything was pre-planned, and all I needed to do is to be there the day of. And she got so overwhelmed with everything, even though everything was planned and ready to go, that she quit on me that day. I was like, what is going on? I'm not freaking out at all because I just lost my right hand, but she felt like everything was too much. For me, this was normal. This follows the standards that we've had. There's nothing abnormal here.
I think there's a disconnect between what our industry is like on site and all the planning leading up to it, where you do need a certain type of personality for this. And if somebody might think, oh, I want to do events, and then they get into it and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe this isn't for me. So I think recognizing that is also really important. Is this a career that you actually want? Because it can be crazy sometimes, and it's not meant for everybody.
And then going to the coaching, what we said about like, how do you not get overwhelmed when there's so much information out there?
When we're hiring, we should be hiring people out of reputable schools. We should be hiring people that have gone to school and gotten the education. We shouldn't carry the burden of having to teach this to them. That is why the education is there. That's why programs like SAIT are so important. And wherever you are in the country, you should know what is happening in education in events. You should know what they're being taught, and if you don't like it, you can influence it. You should be a part of it. Next step is we should be hiring people that are taking the education, taking it seriously, and coming into this with a baseline that we all understand. Everybody's allowed to have an opinion about it. The schools actually like your involvement. So get involved there and hire people that have taken the commitment to go to school. Especially those 15 at the back.
Oh, they're back.
They came back.
I
Somebody
felt
texted
guilty.
them.
I think, just to add to that, in terms of, I think there's a common misconception about new entries into the industry that they don't want to pay their dues. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think they struggle with paying their dues, for lack of a better way of putting it, without clarity. And I think it's important in terms of the mentor lens or mentorship lens, beyond the foundation of education, that we explain, and while deliverables are extremely important, explaining the reasoning behind the amount of work going into a deliverable and teaching that aspect so there's clarity, and it gives ownership over their learning to understand that, okay, you don't have to, like, I need this detailed run sheet, not just because it's what we do in our standard practice, it's because you're going to learn how to think through a full program, minute to minute, every role and responsibility. You're going to go on site feeling confident in your experience that you've created, as opposed to just pulling everything else. So I think it's important to focus on the learning in terms of a mentor lens versus just creating an excellent deliverable.
Yeah. I'm someone that loves to learn hands-on. So a lot of my education when I came into events was I put myself into like hands-on. If I wanted to learn sound engineering, I was hands-on on it. If I wanted to learn video production, I was hands-on. So I feel like there's value to, yes, having the theory. And at the same time, I was going to school to understand the logic behind what I'm doing as I'm executing. And I think there's something to be said about good education that sets the foundation, but then also following that up with hands-on. I think there's too many people that go to school, they get a wonderful fancy degree with a diploma, they get into boots on the ground, and then they're freaking out because they're like, what I learned does not match what's actually happened in real life. So it's not just the opportunity to learn, but also how do we create capacity and capability for them to have that experience on the show floor, like coming on site to understand how that applies. So that takes me back to our initial thought, but this is where I want to bring our audience back in as we're thinking about that. And before we get into talking more about tools and systems, I want to understand where information itself can be breaking down for you. And the next question is talking about information gap between what we get taught, between reality, between what happens in real life, and what creates the most friction for you when you, and I see some of the results are already coming in. For our panel, I would like to follow up here is, how do you feel like this data is meeting reality, your reality, as you're thinking about your own world?
I think in an agency perspective, we move really quickly, and we're obviously always trying to adapt and be more productive and using the tools and leveraging the data. But oftentimes it falls short when we come down to capacity. In terms of just capacity, we move so quickly from one thing to the next that putting emphasis on learning those tools in and out and understanding the data and using that data to your benefit is obviously our best practice and what we want to do. The reality of our industry is it can be challenging sometimes to, if you balance the priorities. Being able to use the tool to a certain level is always a priority, but then excelling in it and really understanding it and using it to your benefit, to your business, your bottom line, can be friction.
Because it's also the time factor, like how much time do I actually have to put aside from this one busy schedule that I have, running all the things that I have to run to learn something new.
I also think that there's so much sorry, I keep talking.
You're doing great.
There's so much out there, and it's often, especially from an agency perspective, we have so much customization, and from client to client, it's different. So to find a one-size-fits-all tool is not necessarily applicable to our day-to-day use of it. And so finding the right tools, we have a team that focuses on that, but it still takes a lot of time, and then understanding how we can benefit it. We're in a unique industry in terms of certain tools.
Nisa, when you think about your team and roles that they play, how do you feel like this falls for them?
I think it's the same. Like for me, where the tools don't always work together, that's the biggest challenge, is that integration and, okay, yeah, I want to do this, but oh no, I need to do this. And I think there's a way to do it, and maybe if I try this other software, and oh, is that worth paying for it? Try and see if it's going to work. And now I've spent 3 hours of my day trying to get something to work, and ultimately I'm like, screw it, I'm done. I'm going back to the old ways. And I don't want to be the dinosaur, but at the same point in time, I just want to get something done.
I feel like we get drowned in these tools that are built for subscription. That's what they're built for. They're not built to make your business better. They're built to get you addicted to them so that you have to subscribe, so that you can't live without them. And many of them I have no use for. There's like a good old spreadsheet is still okay, everybody. It's okay.
And we can automate on top of a spreadsheet, yes.
I also think all the tools are, and because I'm small, it's putting more pressure on me to be everything. Like Canva is, okay, now you can be a graphic designer too. Like I've already had to become a website designer. Like I'm not a website designer, I'm an event planner. And now I have to do everything. Like I'm doing budget, so I'm an accountant. I'm doing a website design. I'm doing graphic design. I'm doing all of these things that I have to learn, and it's challenging.
And do you think that's discipline for you to stay out of that? Or is it because the tools have become so easily accessible that you find yourself just being, oh shit, I can just...
Yeah, a little bit.
That's a great follow-up, because it was on my
thing.
mind too.
Yeah.
Is there a way where at one point you're going to have to decide what's your time worth?
Absolutely. It's a time
It's
and
not
a
too
money
late.
thing.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to turn you around.
But I also feel like this is a great opportunity for students and young people in the industry to come in and be like, hey, I'm an expert on Canva, and I can help take that off your workload.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's something to be said about people that want to be knowledgeable in all areas, but then still being an expert in an area where you can execute excellently. And I think those people are going to be sought even more now, because we are forced by AI to do everything and learn everything. And I'm vibe coding. I've never been a developer, but now I am. I'm like, great. I'm like, what? I'm supposed to be producing events, not developing apps, because I feel like now I should. Because if not, maybe I'm missing the opportunity. So there's a lot of that happening. And you're right, it goes to discipline. You have to know, not that you have to know your lane, but I think it's important to know what's for you and what's not for you.
And I think many of us have been guilty about hiring professionals, and we're like, you need to hire us because we're professionals. And then we take on the jobs of other people's professions when it comes to finance and marketing and graphic design. And it's like, we should be hiring professionals to do that with us.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so up until this point, we're talking now information, we're talking data, we're talking responsibility, judgment, we're covering some ground. Coming back to the audience here, taking one more pulse of the room. As we're looking ahead, I want to hear from you as what needs to change most for planning to work better, whether AI is part of the picture or not. And let's see what we got here. We got clear decision ownership, better workflow design before tools, which was the point of my keynote. Some people have been listening, thank you. Cleaner, more accessible data, absolutely. Fewer disconnected platforms. What are your thoughts?
I've already said fewer disconnected platforms.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think, sorry.
It's real dynamic up here, guys. I hope you're enjoying.
Yeah, I think clear decision ownership is also from what that's important to me.
Yeah, and I think even though it sounds simple on paper, fewer disconnected platforms, everybody should be able to do that. It's also one of probably the hardest things to do because unless you haven't touched technology, you're not aware how hard it is to actually connect to other parts of the system and how this ecosystem of events is very siloed. And you can't just easily bring data in from all the parts of the event spectrum that you're working with.
I also think this is where I'm going to use the example. There's a trend where people are saying, you need to simplify your registration form. Okay, great. But I still need to get a whole bunch of data. So if you want me to simplify my registration form, now I have to email them again. And those two systems don't connect right now. And so that's a lot more work for me. And we were talking about it in one of the sessions yesterday, and it really comes down to a particular event and what works for the event. And I also think when we're planning, going back to complexity and personalization even, making sure that we're really dialing down to what does this event need and not making it so complex that we're now introducing 5 new softwares that we need to use or attendees need to use and really trying to make it simple and easy.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be the devil's advocate because there's a fine line there as well. Like I have been through registration forms that are like 20 pages long, and I'm wondering to myself, is this really necessary? What are you going to do with this data? Like at least tell me if you're collecting all this data, is this relevant to anything? Do something with it.
Right, but if your one question is you're going to ask, what's your dietary need? I think it's okay to have 5 questions instead of 4.
If you're specific and you actually are going to improve my experience.
If I'm going to keep you safe.
If you're just going to ask me, what's your favorite color? Are you going to create this experience for me that actually impacts my answer? Or is just something that randomly you want to know that I don't know what you're going to do with? I think we'll segue here into a lot of, I wish things would be different. Epiphany, I see you want to add something to that.
Oh no, I was just agreeing. I'm good.
Okay, I think by now we know that we're not hungry for more tools. I hear a lot of overcomplication and is there a way to simplify things? Also maybe clarity in ownership to understand what's necessary, what's not, decision making, what humans are actually responsible for. I'm curious about as systems are taking more and more on the execution layer of the events, what becomes more valuable are the people that we mentioned earlier, but what skills will separate the professionals who thrive from the ones who just get by, just get squeezed in. And my question to you is, what skills do you feel like will matter most for the future event professionals in this new future of events?
Yeah, I can share my thoughts on that. I think the skill sets that are most important, that have always been most important, that will continue are the human-based skills, not the hard skills. Being able to find clarity and complexity, being able to make decisions when there's no right answer, being able to sustain your capabilities in a healthy way and grow from your learnings. It's very organic and I think it's human-based.
Yeah, adaptability. Being able to change on the fly, being able to continue to learn and grow
Yeah, I think young people that are entering our world are going to have to shift more and faster than we did because things are changing at such a rapid pace. And as much as I promote education, and I think that it's really important, so much of what you learn today will be out of date by the time you get into the workforce because of how fast technology is changing the way we do our jobs and the tools that we're using. So I think going into it and like we're going to now rely on the next generation to keep up with this because we're tired. It's been a long career. I don't want to keep up with it. I want a bunch of really excited young people that are going to take it, embrace it, and find a way to make it an effective way to work.
I love that. I think you definitely just helped me segue into our last point. Thank you, Dustin. Working together. I think for me, it's so important when we think about how do we protect the human sustainability factor, because at the end of the day, you are yourself the best event you're ever going to put on. And if you do not take care of your own energy, your capacity, then nobody else will. And this industry is not forgiving of that. It will ask more and more of you the more you give it, right? So there has to be some boundaries. So when I think about that, and for me, it's all about Fit for Events is this framework that I created, which is not just grit, discipline, resilience, or endurance. I'm talking about capacity about 4 different pillars, which are important to me, and that is mental capacity to make good decisions, especially under pressure. Emotional capacity to be able to lead people through sometimes difficult times, and we had to do that as leaders many times before. And then physical capacity, your own capacity to sustain long days. And I'm sure you've all been working 18-hour days while on site and long events that just take so much of your energy. And for us to protect that human sustainability, we have to think about how do we do that for ourselves, but also for our teams, for the people that we bring into our industry. So I'm going to turn the question to you as you think about not just yourself, but also your own team. What does being fit for events look like in practice, and where could be maybe some area of improvement?
I think we can start by getting rid of the badge of honor that is the 18-hour days and
Being busy.
Turn volume and complexity into efficiency and become really efficient at what you do. Provide efficient tools to your team. Demand efficiency so that we're not working 18 hours. Like nobody should ever be doing that. And we need to be better at that. So efficiency is the name of the game.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's also important to model a good balance, not just promote it. I think we as leaders have to protect people's capacity and listen to them when they say they're at capacity, and treat rest times and post-event breaks as part of the event cycle, not just a reward for enduring. I think those are kind of mentalities that we can shift into more so to preserve all of our teams.
I agree.
Yeah, I also think it's recognizing that everybody is different.
Yeah.
So what self-care leading up to an event and during an event is going to be different for everybody. My love language is bacon.
Bacon or baking?
Bacon.
Nice.
Banquet staff will be like, you're just going to have bacon for breakfast? And I'm like, yeah, I am, because this is great. But that's what sustains me. Someone else obviously is not going to live on a plate of bacon. So is recognizing what they need. Is it a young person that needs to recharge at the end of the day by going to the bar and having a drink, or is it somebody who needs to go to their hotel room and have a quiet moment alone? Recognizing that it's different for everybody is really important.
I have so much more to add to this, but I think we're running out of time, so I'm going to just stop here. But because I agree with everything that you all said. At the same time, I think creating boundaries around your team members, because like, for example, a type A personality like me that's a workaholic in recovery, although there isn't much recovery at all, would just run and go and work nonstop unless you stop them and say, okay, you need to take a break. Or make the schedule flexible so that if I work from 4 a.m. in the morning up until 10 p.m. at night, in the middle of the day I can go and do my workout. And don't be strict about, you got to work your 9 to 5 or whatever that might look like. I want to come to an end now that we only have so many minutes left. It's going to be a quick fire drill. So I'm going to ask you a question, and you only have so many words that you can answer to. So don't elaborate too much. And with that, let's see. The first one that I have for you is, what needs to stop in 2025? Dustin.
What needs to stop
in 2026?
I was going to say.
Thanks. I
we
caught
stopped
myself.
2025.
I did.
That's my answer. What needs to stop in 2026? Having 2 apps at a conference. That's not great. I love you all. I really do.
Lisa, anything else?
Taking something old, giving it a new name, and calling it a new trend.
All right. Epiphany.
Using busy as a badge of honor.
Through that. Okay. What leadership habit do we need to double down on?
Compassion and empathy.
You took my word. Yeah, I think something we need to double down on is to better understand our teams. And I think sort of Denise's point is that everybody is going to experience life and work differently. And I think being open-minded and understanding how we can best support them having a happy, healthy world wherever you work.
All right.
Sorry, what do we need to double down on?
Yes, as a leadership habit.
Yeah, I think double down on seeing people for who they are and not grouping them into generations or roles or titles, etc.
Love it. Okay, last one. What's the most overrated metric in event planning?
Social impressions.
I'm going to say
LinkedIn impressions.
the most overrated metric is the time put in.
I was going to say impressions too, so I'm with you.
Love it. All right. With that, let's see. Do we have any audience questions? I'm going to have to check the app really quick. While I do that, I want you all to share with our audience if they would like to learn more about you, where should they connect with you? Let's start with you, Nisa.
Nisa Silzer on LinkedIn.
Love it.
Dustin Wessling on LinkedIn and Tinder. I was waiting all day to say that.
That's perfect. Tiffany Bork on LinkedIn.
I love it. All right, you are more than welcome to follow the podcast and engage with us that way. I want to thank you, each one of you, for taking the time and having this conversation. I want to thank you as being our 5th guest on stage by interacting with the polling, and also the organizers of this conference for making this possible. Thank you so much, Arlene. Thank you, the production team, for supporting us so well. And with that, we are ready to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate that. And as I'm coming to a close here, the only thing that I would like to add, if you want more conversations like this, EventsDemystified is available wherever you listen to podcasts. There is a QR code on the screen. You can follow us on YouTube and on Spotify, as well as any other format. I'm running the CEO edition this year. We already have several conversations with CEO from event space, and they're really thoughtful conversation about what does it take to lead in the event industry. And with that, I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me. Thank you.